Hello, beautiful people around the world, the Keep Climbing family. I hope everybody is blessed, well, and healthy, and that nothing but the best is going on in all you beautiful people's life, man. We have another request from an amazing family member on the channel, Martin. Thank you for the kind donation and all the other videos that you sent in as well that we will be checking out. But you did tell me if the topic is too heavy, I don't have to react to it. But hey, like I tell y'all, whatever you guys send me, donation, comment section, emails, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you guys are sending in, we will eventually check it out. And everybody is free to send whatever you want. We will get into it. And before I press play on this video, I do want to send love and my condolences to our soldiers. You know what I'm saying? I want to send love to all of our veterans on the channel. And this is a pretty heavy topic, so this is a disclaimer. And again, shout out to my brother Martin for just sending over a lot of other amazing requests too as well, not just this one that we're going to be checking out. And yeah, all right, so let's get into it. So I said the disclaimer now. I don't need no hate comments towards me, towards anybody else in the comment section. All we do is spread love, check out things for the first time. We hear things out. Everybody is tied to their own opinion on this channel. And one thing I want to say before I press play is that I love all. I love every last one of y'all. I could care less what your skin color is, what you look like, what you smell like, how tall, how short, how big, how skinny, where you come from, where your background is. If you've done something terrible or bad in your past, on this channel, you are loved and accepted. All right. You are loved and accepted. I want that to be known before we press play. But without further ado, these were Hitler's plans for the U.S. if he won World War II. Let's check it out, y'all.
Hitler's goal of a German master race controlling the world required space and plenty of Aryan DNA. Little wonder that he set his sights on the U.S. But how detailed were his plans, and were they already underway? History is very clear about Hitler's relentless march across Europe and his desire to rebuild under the flag of the Third Reich. But what about across the Atlantic? James P. Duffy, historian and author of Target America, Hitler's Plan to Attack the United States, says that's a little less clear, and historians have long debated how much Hitler wanted. Duffy says that Hitler intended to rule the world. He cites a 1927 letter from Rudolf Hess to the London-based Nazi Walter Hevel, in which Hess wrote of Hitler preaching, "World peace will be realizable only when one power, the racially best power, has attained complete and uncontested supremacy. That power can then provide a sort of world police." This seems to confirm there were plans for even America to fall under the jurisdiction of a global Nazi law enforcement agency. Hitler definitely had his eye on the US. Although the national interest calls the Nazi attempt to build a bomber that could cross the Atlantic an idiotic waste of resources, the idea behind building something literally called the America Bomber means that the US was on Hitler's list. And that, says Duffy, was just part of it. In 1941, the Nazi regime started planning for a post-war world. First and foremost, that meant a massive navy with hundreds of submarines, anchored by 25 battleships and 150 destroyers. In the spring of 1941, Life magazine sent correspondent and former Belgian ambassador John Cudahy to report on what was happening in Germany. Cudahy got a sit-down with Adolf Hitler himself, who started by pointing out that convoys, just like the ones that the US was sending to Britain, signified war. So Cudahy got right to the point and asked Hitler what his plans were regarding the US. He explained that most Americans backed the idea of going to war against Nazi Germany because they were afraid that once Europe fell, they'd be next. Speaking through a translator, Hitler called the idea preposterous. Cudahy wrote, "He laughed at that and refused to take me seriously. He said the idea of a Western Hemisphere invasion was about as fantastic as an invasion of the moon." According to Cudahy, Hitler went on to say that he had too high an opinion of the intelligence and good sense of Americans. The logistics didn't work. Millions of troops would need to be moved across the Atlantic for the Nazis to gain a foothold in the US. That meant there was absolutely nothing for America to worry about. At least Hitler said so. But rational thought and reasoning weren't his strongest qualities. In order to talk about what Hitler might have had in store for the US, it's worth mentioning just why he might want to see that part of the world burn, at least eventually. According to University of North Carolina Emeritus Professor of History Gerhard L. Weinberg, Hitler had been writing about taking out the US as far back as the 1920s. While he wanted global domination for Germany and all that, he also felt like it was sort of his moral obligation to right a perceived wrong, and that skewed his view in favor of war with the US. It all went back to the stab-in-the-back myth, which the US Holocaust Memorial Museum describes as the belief that Germans' loss in World War I came not on the battlefield, but because of espionage, sabotage, and subterfuge on the home front. All that was, of course, supposedly led by those who would become enemies of the Nazi state, including Jews, liberals, and communists. At the same time, it meant that America didn't really have all that much to do with Germany's loss. Therefore, America wasn't a military might that needed to be contended with. But what historian and author James P. Duffy says was described as Europe's greatest future rival. That meant Hitler believed he could wrap up the war in Europe, take his sweet time building up a navy, then deal with the US. Adolf Hitler famously wrote Mein Kampf, but less famously, he wrote a second book, the very directly named Hitler's Zweites Buch, or Hitler's Second Book. According to Target America, Hitler's plan to attack the United States. The book was written in 1928, but not published until 1961. It outlined a series of 3 conflicts, and it wasn't until the third one that Hitler got around to the USA. First, Hitler saw his Germany taking on France to regain what they'd lost post-World War I. Then, he was going to head east and seize all the land and agricultural resources he needed from the Soviet Union. And then, on to America, which he wrote was a real threat to German domination of the world. But here's the thing. Hitler wrote that analysis before the Great Depression got into full swing. As he watched what was unfolding across the Atlantic, he eventually came to the conclusion that America was so weakened by her own problems that it didn't really matter. The Third War could wait. According to Gerhard L. Weinberg, Hitler believed that wrapping up the war in Europe, stabilizing his Third Reich, and building up an army of long-range forces was all something he could take his time doing. America, he thought, was too weak to do anything but wait. There's a lot that's been written about Adolf Hitler's obsession with taking on the Soviet Union, but according to Cambridge historian Brendan Sims, he was just as obsessed with the US. So much so, Sims told ex-Berliner, that it shaped policies across the Third Reich. Sims explains that the more research he did, the more he found about Hitler's focus on America. It became absolutely obvious that Anglo-America, that's my phrase, Hitler tended to refer to them as the Anglo-Saxons, was the biggest kid on the block, his main focus, his main enemy, the partner he would have liked, the biggest element of his reality. That's a massive claim, and Sims says that there were a few layers to Hitler casting his greedy eye toward the US. Part of it started with the US having something that Germany didn't: size. Let's put that in perspective. The US is about 28 times the size of Germany, but that only tells part of the story. Germany could fit inside California and take up about only 85% of the state. It's also about the same size as Montana and New Mexico, give or take a bit. Even if Hitler had managed to take over all of Europe, building his master race would require a ton of space and a ton of resources, which America has in abundance. Adolf Hitler was front and center at World War I's Second Battle of the Marne, and according to Cambridge historian Brendan Sims, it was there that he had a run-in with 2 American soldiers who made a massive impression. They were tall, blonde, and blue-eyed. Sound familiar? Hitler's attempts to build his master Aryan race are well documented, and Sims says there's another, often overlooked part of that. Hitler developed a theory that one of the richest places to find all that Aryan DNA he was so obsessed with was the USA. Conquering America meant all new seeds from which his Aryan race could grow. The theory went like this. Over the course of hundreds of years, the US population had been reinforced by immigrants from Europe.
Remember, the United States is a nation of immigrants. People came here to avoid war in Europe.
They weren't just any immigrants either. They were the brightest, the strongest, the most adventurous, and the most resilient. They left behind a Europe that was overcrowded, disease-ridden, and famished. They headed west and settled in the US. There, they thrived with wide open spaces and resources of the type only America could offer. And United States laws helped reinforce his ideas about just how pure their blood was. Legislation limited or outlawed immigration from certain areas of Europe, like the Slavic countries, along with interracial marriages. In other words, he saw the US as an invaluable source of genetic material. Henry Ford is often lauded as the father of the American automobile industry. But here's the thing. While he was a genius when it came to industry and manufacturing, he was a terrible person. Ford was a raging anti-Semite.
Ford blamed the Jewish people for everything from World War to short skirts, cheap movies, and jazz music.
And
There's a lot of people saying, I would never buy a Ford again, or I would never buy a Ford. I've seen that a lot.
PBS says that he was often quoted saying that all the world's ills could be traced back to Jews or to the Jewish capitalists. And if that's the sort of thing that seems like it would have Hitler singing "You've Got a Friend in Me," it absolutely was. According to Bradley W. Hart, author of Hitler's American Friends, it was even more than that. Ford was spouting anti-Semitic rhetoric long before mainstream America knew about things like the concentration camps, and his views didn't go unnoticed by Hitler. According to research from The Nation, Ford profited heavily from manufacturing for the Third Reich, even for months after the U.S. officially declared war. A contemporary report from the U.S. Treasury Department shows they knew about it, summed up in this observation. There would seem to be at least a tacit acceptance by Ford's son, Mr. Edsel Ford of the Reliance, on the known neutrality of the Ford family as a basis of receipt of favors from the German Reich.
In July 1938, Ford accepted Germany's Grand Cross, the highest honor the Third Reich could bestow on a foreigner.
Hart goes on to say that Hitler saw Ford as a way into America, and he uncovered records describing how Hitler had tapped Heinrich Ford to become what Hitler described as the leader of the growing fascist movement in America. World War II usually plays out as an Allies versus Axis conflict, but it wasn't that neat and tidy. According to the National World War II Museum, the US had a faction of Nazis that weren't just alive and well, they were holding rallies at venues like Madison Square Garden. The German-American Bund dated back to 1936, and the entire idea behind the organization was to promote all the ideals and racial hatred that went along with being a Nazi. That Madison Square Garden event attracted about 22,000 loyal members in 1939, and it was done under the command of a German World War I veteran named Fritz Kuhn. The Bund, of course, got the attention of the House Committee on Un-American Activities, and while they were found not to be a threat to national security, there is an interesting footnote. One of the claims used to discredit the Bund was that Kuhn reported directly to Hitler and that Hitler was meddling in US affairs. It makes sense that Hitler would be thrilled to have a Nazi party ready and waiting for him. But not only was that not true, but according to traces, Hitler outright denounced the party. Why? Because the Nazis thought the Bund was giving them a bad name. Names like Dachau and Auschwitz are instantly recognizable, but they made up only a sliver of a percentage of the facilities the Nazi regime built to contain, enslave, and execute those they didn't like. Here's a terrifying statistic. According to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, there were more than 44,000 camps of varying purposes, all detention and incarceration based, that were active during the Third Reich. Would those camps have been set up in North America? According to the CBC, probably. In 2019, the Library and Archives Canada purchased a book that had been taken from Hitler's personal library. It was called what translates to Statistics, Press, and Organizations of Jewry in the United States and Canada. The 137-page book is essentially a compilation of data on Jewish populations across North America.
What this book shows us is that there was already the beginnings of a plan, had the war gone differently, that the Holocaust would have happened here.
And as the LAC curator Michael Kent explained, this information would have been the building blocks to rolling out the final solution in Canada. The book, written by Nazi linguist Heinz Kloss, details things from ethnicity and languages of cities' populations to listing Jewish organizations. And Kent further explained to The Guardian that the book is essentially proof that Hitler and the Nazi Party had plans to expand the Holocaust to North America. Kent said, "The Holocaust wasn't a European event. It was an event that didn't have the opportunity to spread out of Europe."
Whoa. I know y'all probably going crazy in the comments. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I hope everybody's having an amazing start to your week, that your life is going well, that Everything is going well in your careers, your jobs, your occupations, your marriage, your relationships, your friendships, your love life. Yes, let's look at some of these comments. Let's check them out. Hitler's thoughts on being the world's police, didn't that sound like America? Somebody says, no mention that there were Japanese, Italian, and German concentration camps in America, or that Stalin wanted to invade the U.S. through Alaska. Oh man! And then y'all know what, man? Let me hold on. Henry Ford wasn't wrong. I wish Hitler had won. Y'all know these comments are filled with everything you could think of. One thing that won't let you down is the people in the comments. Everybody is tied to their own opinion, and then there's people that also come on here just spamming and saying nonsense. The shout out to the bots that come on here with all the negativity and leaving dislikes, and to the ones that don't even be real people, they just be bots and AIs. Shout out to those in the comments. Yeah. Somebody says, Jesus, if only Hitler had won, that would be really something. You should do a video on why the USA took so long to get involved. Sounds little like the propaganda dress up from the left to divide American society that can be traced back to the Obamas. Oh man. Oh man. Germany had no reason to fight the USA. Who writes this fiction? If he had won World War II, is Hitler worth a capital H? Isn't that reserved for a god? I'm telling y'all, these comments, I'm telling you. My grandfather's family disappeared and when Hitler invaded. The Nazis shot 34,000 Jews in a mass grave in 2 days of Bayard. And there's some real comments in here. In about 1957, some German woman came to my house and tried to recruit me for my training. My mother thought she was talking about my confirmation classes. No, it was the Bund in the upstate NY in New York. My strong mother apologized and threw the woman out of her house. Literally, she picked her up and threw her down the brick staircase about 6 steps. Sheesh. Well, now you may allow another born and win. What shows Hitler's lack of knowledge about what warfare would be in the coming years was the fact that the 1941 plans for a large navy didn't include any aircraft carriers. I think you forgot to mention that ineligible debt that Hitler owed to the American movement. Oh man. Henry Ford, thank you for the Model T $5 wage. Do your employees could afford to buy what they built? Give us a middle class in Greenfield Village. Oh man, I think I done read enough comments, huh? Yeah. My grandfather fought in World War II. He was wounded and captured. He spent the rest of his service in several camps. Eventually, they were liberated. He's still alive at 98 and talks about special events about his experience. Wow. Wow, that's a powerful comment. Shout out to all the grandfathers out there, all the dads out there, all the real ones out there, huh? My grandfather fought in World War II at 18 years old. He was on Omaha Beach, 1944. He was in the second wave and advanced up the beach. He was shot twice and died in 2011 to old age. Wow. Nobody knew he had 2 Purple Hearts and a service medal until after he died. He kept it a secret for 70 years until his death. Wow. To those who prepared this documentary, awesome work. I couldn't help but remember a series I watched where the alternative history was very much as you described. They did their homework. Thank you for all your hard work. I'm sure the youth can learn history and take an interest in history through this medium. All right, last comment. My dad fought in World War II at 17 years old. He later fought in the Korean War and later the Vietnam War. After three wars, he ended up with a Bronze Star and Purple Heart. Salute to all the veterans on the channel. Salute to anyone that's ever served in the armed forces. I send my love and condolences to the passing of our soldiers. World War II. Oh man. Wow. Y'all let me know how y'all feel about that one, man. We do have another one sent in. And again, shout out to my brother for sending those amazing requests. The next one we're going to be checking out, I believe it was What If Hitler Never Invaded Russia? So, yeah, we're going to be pulling that one up pretty soon. So y'all stay tuned. We have a lot of requests, a lot of music, a lot of non-music, a lot of more sports and stuff to get into this week. So I love y'all, man. Everybody is tied to their own opinion down below. So please go crazy in the comments and feel free to share what you got to say. But I love y'all and y'all have an amazing rest of y'all day. Take care, man.